The dining room smelled of roasted garlic and rosemary, the same as every year on my mother-in-law's birthday. I had spent the better part of the afternoon on that lamb, marinating it since dawn, checking the internal temperature every 15 minutes like a nervous nurse. Evelyn liked her meat pink in the center, but not bloody, and I had finally mastered it after 6 years of trying. The table was set with her good china, the cream-colored plates with the gold rims that she only brought out for Easter and Christmas, and, apparently, for herself. I had arranged white tulips in a crystal vase, 3 stems leaning left, 2 right, because she had once mentioned she preferred asymmetry. I was adjusting the napkins for the 4th time when Mark came up behind me and put his hands on my shoulders. "You're going to wear a groove in the floor," he said. "I'm not nervous," I said, which was a lie. I was always nervous before his parents came over. It was not that they were unkind. They were simply watchful, especially Evelyn, who had a way of looking at my furniture, my cooking, my choice of hand soap, as though she were cataloging evidence for a trial I did not know I was on trial for. "Relax," Mark said, kissing the top of my head. "It's just dinner." "It's her 60th, I reminded him. She only turns 60 once. "Thank God," he muttered, but he was smiling. He let go of my shoulders and walked over to the sideboard where I had laid out the appetizers. He picked up a stuffed mushroom and popped it into his mouth before I could stop him. "Those are for the guests," I said. "I'm a guest," he said, chewing. "I'm your favorite guest." I swatted his hand away from the second one and told him to go check on his father in the living room. Harold had arrived early, as he always did, and was now sitting in my best armchair with a glass of scotch I had poured for him, flipping through a fishing magazine I had bought specifically for his visits. He was an easy man to please. A drink, a chair, a magazine about bass fishing, and he was content for hours. I sometimes wished Evelyn took after him. I was just wiping down the counter for the 5th time when the doorbell rang. Mark was already halfway to the front door before I could take off my apron. I heard him say, "Mom, you look beautiful," and I heard her reply, "I know, dear." Then I heard another voice, a woman's voice, light and warm, laughing at something Harold had just said from the living room. I stepped out of the kitchen and into the foyer, and that was when I saw her. She was standing behind Evelyn, her hand resting lightly on my mother-in-law's shoulder like they had known each other for years. She had dark hair pulled back in a sleek low ponytail, a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and a smile that was too wide, too ready, too comfortable for someone I had never seen before in my life. "This is Rachel," Evelyn announced, her voice carrying that particular note of triumph she reserved for surprises she knew she would enjoy. "She's a consultant from the head office. Can you imagine? Such a small world." She and Derek used to know each other back in college. "We were in the same study group," Rachel said, offering me her hand. Her grip was firm, brief, professional. "I'm so sorry to crash the family dinner. Evelyn was kind enough to invite me when she heard I was in town." "I told her she had to come," Evelyn said. "She's been staying at the Marriott downtown, all alone. Can you imagine? A young woman, eating dinner in a hotel room on a Saturday night." I couldn't bear it. I shook Rachel's hand and said it was nice to meet her. My voice sounded flat to my own ears, but I could not seem to adjust it. I turned to Mark, expecting him to look as puzzled as I felt, but he was already guiding his mother toward the living room, asking about her new glasses, her new haircut, her new anything. Rachel followed them, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor with an unhurried confidence. I stood in the foyer for a moment, alone, still holding the dish towel I had forgotten to put down. I went back to the kitchen and checked the lamb. It was perfect. I checked the potatoes. They were golden. I checked the green beans. They were still crisp. Everything was exactly as it should be, and yet something in my chest was tightening, a slow, familiar knot that I had learned to ignore over the years. I told myself I was being silly. Evelyn was a social woman. She collected people the way other women collected handbags. This was nothing personal. It was just who she was. I carried the platter of lamb to the dining room and set it on the trivet I had placed at the head of the table. Evelyn and Harold took their usual seats, Evelyn at the head, Harold to her left. Mark sat to her right, leaving the seat beside him for me. Derek had not arrived yet, which was typical. He was always late, always apologetic, always forgiven. Rachel hovered near the sideboard, examining a framed photograph of Mark and me from our wedding day. "You two look so happy here," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "We were," I said, and then immediately regretted the word choice. "Were." It hung in the air like a cough in a quiet room. "We still are," Mark said quickly, shooting me a look I could not quite read. "That was just a hot day. We were sweating through our suits." Rachel laughed. It was a pleasant laugh, musical and unforced. I remember that summer. Derek and I were in the same thermodynamics class. We used to complain about the lack of air conditioning in the engineering building. "Derek never complained about anything," Evelyn said. "He just suffered in silence like his father." Harold grunted in agreement, not looking up from his magazine. I set down the potatoes and asked if anyone wanted wine. Mark said yes. Evelyn said red, please. Rachel said she would love a glass of white if I had any open. I did not have any white open. I had not bought any white because Mark's mother only drank red. But I said I would open one, of course, and I went back to the kitchen and pulled a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc from the back of the refrigerator where it had been sitting for 3 months, waiting for a guest who never came. I opened it with more force than necessary and poured a generous glass. When I returned to the dining room, Derek had finally arrived. He was shrugging off his jacket, apologizing to his mother, kissing her cheek, telling her she looked radiant. He was taller than Mark, broader in the shoulders, with a more carefree laugh. He had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. He had also been the one who left town at 19 and never looked back, returning only for holidays and birthdays and emergencies. Evelyn forgave him for his absence in a way she never forgave Mark for his presence. Mark stayed. Mark was reliable. Mark was ordinary. Derek was a visitor, and visitors were always treated like royalty. Derek saw Rachel and his face changed. It was subtle, a flicker of something that might have been surprise, or might have been recognition, or might have been something else entirely. He recovered quickly, walking over to her with the easy confidence of a man who had never had to work for anyone's approval. "Rachel," he said. "You made it." "I was invited," she said, smiling up at him. "I couldn't say no to a home-cooked meal." "My sister-in-law is a fantastic cook," Derek said, and he finally looked at me. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic on the expressway was a nightmare." I told him it was fine. It was not fine, but I had learned long ago that pointing out Derek's lateness accomplished nothing except making me look petty. I gestured for everyone to sit down and began carving the lamb. The knife slid through the meat with a satisfying ease. I had done my job well. I had done everything well. And yet, as I placed the slices on each plate, I could not shake the feeling that I was serving a meal to people who had already eaten. The conversation at the table was lively. Evelyn dominated it, as she always did, steering the topics from her garden to her book club to her recent trip to the coast. She was a talker, a connector, a woman who filled silence the way I filled serving bowls. Mark listened and nodded and added the occasional comment. Harold ate and grunted. Derek laughed at his mother's stories and told a few of his own, about a business trip to Texas, a client who had fallen asleep in a meeting, a hotel room that had been mistakenly double-booked. Rachel laughed at all of them. She laughed at Derek's stories, and she laughed at Evelyn's stories, and she laughed at Harold's grunts as though they were punchlines. I ate my lamb and said nothing. After the main course, I cleared the plates and brought out the dessert. I had made a lemon tart, Evelyn's favorite, with a buttery crust and a silky curd and a perfect ring of candied lemon slices on top. I set it in the center of the table and cut the first slice. "This looks wonderful," Rachel said. "You really went all out." "It's just a tart," I said. "No, it's not just a tart," Evelyn said. "It's my favorite tart. She makes it every year for my birthday. She knows I don't like chocolate, and she remembers." She looked at me with something that might have been approval, or might have been assessment. "You're a good daughter-in-law, Claire." I felt a warmth in my chest that was almost painful. It was such a small thing, such a rare thing, to hear her say that. I was so busy savoring it that I almost missed her next words. "That's why I wanted you to meet Rachel," Evelyn said, turning to me with an eager brightness. She has an opening in her department, and I thought of you immediately. You've been talking about wanting a change. Something less stressful, more flexible. I looked at Rachel. She was smiling, pleasant, professional. I mentioned to Evelyn that we're expanding our regional team, she said. We need someone with organizational skills, attention to detail. She said you'd be perfect. Your head office? I asked. For what company? Caldwell Logistics, she said. I'm based in Chicago, but I travel frequently. We're partnering with several local branches, including yours. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. You work at Caldwell? For about 6 months now, she said. I transferred from the East Coast office. That's actually how I reconnected with Derek. He reached out on a professional networking site, and we realized we were in the same industry. Such a small world, Evelyn said again. It was indeed a small world. Too small. Caldwell was my employer. I had been there for 8 years, 8 long years of early mornings and late nights and weekends spent catching up on reports. I had never seen Rachel at the office, never heard her name in any meeting, never seen her face on the internal directory. But she was head office. She outranked me. She could transfer me or promote me or fire me, and she had just spent the last 2 hours eating my lamb and drinking my wine and laughing at my family's jokes. I didn't realize you had connections at Caldwell, I said to Mark. He looked up from his tart, his expression neutral. I didn't know about the head office connection. Derek told me Rachel was in town for business, but he didn't say where. I thought it might be a nice surprise, Derek said, shrugging. You and Claire have been talking about her job stress. I figured, what's the harm in introducing her to someone who could help? What's the harm? I set down my fork. The room felt suddenly too warm, too close. I could feel Evelyn watching me, waiting for my reaction. I could feel Rachel's professional smile, patient and unreadable. I could feel Mark's eyes on my face, reading me the way he always did, searching for the storm before it broke. I took a breath. I forced a smile. That's very thoughtful of all of you, I said. I'll think about it. No pressure, Rachel said. Just a conversation. Evelyn launched into another story, this time about a neighbor's dog that had dug up her rose bushes. Everyone laughed. Everyone ate their tart. I pushed the lemon curd around my plate with the back of my fork and counted the seconds until dinner would be over. It was after coffee, when I was stacking the dessert plates, that I heard Derek's voice from the hallway. He thought he was alone. He thought he was quiet. He was talking to Rachel, their voices low, intimate, the way people talk when they assume no one is listening. She doesn't know anything, Derek said. She's fine, Rachel replied. She's just tired. It's a lot of work, hosting a dinner like this. She's always tired. That's her whole personality. Derek, be nice. I'm just saying. Mark could have done better. I stood in the kitchen doorway, a stack of plates in my hands, frozen. I waited for Rachel to defend me. I waited for her to say something, anything, about my cooking, my home, my effort. She said nothing. She just laughed, that same pleasant laugh, and said, "Let's not talk about this here." I went back into the kitchen and set the plates down so hard I heard a small crack. I checked it. One of Evelyn's good plates had split along the rim. I stared at it for a long moment, then slid it to the bottom of the sink and covered it with the dish towel. When I came back to the dining room for the coffee cups, Rachel was standing by the table, lifting her glass for a toast. She was looking directly at me. Her smile was still pleasant, still professional, but there was something else underneath it now, something I could not name. To new beginnings, she said. Everyone raised their glasses. Mark raised his. Evelyn raised hers. Harold grunted and raised his. Derek raised his with a flourish, his eyes on Rachel. I raised my wine glass, but my hand was unsteady. The red wine sloshed over the rim, spilled down the side of the glass, and dripped onto the white tablecloth in a dark, spreading stain. I set the glass down. Everyone was looking at me. I'm so sorry, I said. I'm so clumsy. Evelyn said it was fine, it was only tablecloth, it could be washed. Mark said it was okay, he would get a cloth. Derek laughed and said I was always dropping things. Rachel handed me a napkin. I took it and wiped at the stain, but it only grew, a red bloom in the center of the pristine white. I excused myself to the bathroom and closed the door. I leaned over the sink and stared at my own reflection in the mirror. My face was pale. My hands were shaking. I did not know why. I did not know anything, it seemed. I did not know what Derek meant when he said she did not know anything. I did not know why Rachel's toast felt like a warning. I did not know why Mark had looked away when she raised her glass. I splashed cold water on my face and dried it with a hand towel. I smoothed my hair. I straightened my blouse. I walked back out to the dining room and smiled at my mother-in-law and helped her with her coat and kissed her cheek goodnight and waved goodbye from the front door as their taillights disappeared down the street. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against the wood. Behind me, Mark was rinsing the wine stain from the tablecloth. He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." He said, "You don't look fine." I said, "I'm just tired." I was tired. I was tired of being the one who made the lamb and the tart and the flowers and the effort. I was tired of being thanked and dismissed in the same breath. I was tired of Derek's careless cruelty and Evelyn's watchful eyes and Rachel's pleasant, unreadable smile. I was tired of being the one who did not know anything. I went to bed without saying goodnight. Mark came in later, slid under the covers, and put his arm around my waist. I did not move. I lay there, staring at the dark ceiling, replaying the entire evening in my head. The toast. The stain. The whisper in the hallway. I did not sleep for a long time. And when I finally did, I dreamed of white tablecloths turning red, one drop at a time. Monday morning came too soon. I had barely slept since the dinner party, but I had managed to push the whole thing to the back of my mind by the time I walked into the Caldwell office. The fluorescent lights were the same. The smell of stale coffee and printer toner was the same. The hum of the ventilation system was the same. I needed that sameness. I needed to believe that Saturday night had been a strange dream, a glitch in the routine, something that would fade as soon as I started going through the usual motions. I stopped at the break room first and poured myself a cup of coffee. Nina was already there, stirring her tea with a plastic stirrer and scrolling through something on her phone. She was a quiet woman, about my age, with a gentle voice and a habit of apologizing for things that were not her fault. We had worked in adjacent cubicles for 3 years. I knew her son had asthma. I knew her husband worked nights. I knew she always had a spare granola bar in her drawer for when the vending machine ran out of snacks. She looked up when I walked in and gave me a small smile. "You look tired," she said. "Long weekend." I said, "Family stuff," something like that. She did not push. She never did. She just nodded and went back to her tea. I appreciated that about her. She had a way of being present without being intrusive, a rare quality in an office where gossip was currency. I settled into my cubicle and opened my email. There were 47 unread messages. I went through them methodically, deleting the automated reminders, flagging the follow-ups, replying to the urgent ones. I had been at Caldwell for 8 years, starting as an administrative assistant and working my way up to senior operations coordinator. It was not a glamorous title, but it came with a decent salary and a certain amount of respect. I knew the systems. I knew the clients. I knew which vendors to call and which to avoid. I had built my reputation on consistency and reliability. I was the one people came to when something needed to be done correctly. At 9:30, Greg called me into his office. Greg was my supervisor, a heavy-set man in his 50s with a balding head and a fondness for golf metaphors. He had been my mentor since I first started, the one who had taken me under his wing when I was a nervous 27-year-old who could barely navigate the company directory. He had taught me the ropes, vouched for me in meetings, and given me the opportunities that had led to my promotions. I trusted him more than I trusted most people in my life. He was like a second father. "Close the door," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "We need to talk." I sat down. My heart ticked up a notch, but I told myself it was nothing. Greg had closed the door before. "It was not always bad news. I need to ask you about the Henderson file," he said. "The quarterly report. You were supposed to submit it Friday." "I submitted it," I said. "I sent it Friday morning before lunch. I remember because I had to double-check the shipping figures." Greg's face was troubled. He turned his monitor around so I could see it. He had the file repository open, the folder where all our client reports were stored. There was no Henderson file. There was a folder labeled Henderson, but it was empty except for an old memo from 2 months ago. I don't see it, I said. That's strange. Very strange, Greg said. The client called this morning. They were expecting the report by end of day Friday, so they could review it over the weekend. When they didn't get it, they assumed we had missed the deadline. They pulled out. They signed with a competitor. A smaller firm. They said they couldn't afford to work with a company that missed deadlines. I stared at the screen. My mind was racing. I sent it, I repeated. I watched it upload. I even got the confirmation pop-up. Greg sighed. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Claire, I'm not accusing you of anything. But the file isn't there. And the client is gone. That's a significant loss. Henderson was one of our top accounts. I can resend it, I said. I have a backup on my local drive. You should have a backup in the repository, he said. That's the protocol. You know that. I did know that. I had known it for 8 years. I had never made a mistake like this before. I had never lost a file. I had never lost a client. I started to feel a hot flush creeping up my neck. I'll check my sent folder, I said. I'll find the confirmation email. Go ahead, Greg said. Let me know what you find. I went back to my cubicle and opened my sent folder. I scrolled to Friday morning. There was nothing. I checked my drafts. Nothing. I checked my deleted items. Nothing. I checked my external backup drive, the one I kept in my desk drawer for emergencies. The Henderson file was there, the final version, time-stamped Friday at 11:15. But there was no email. There was no proof that I had ever sent it. My hands started to tremble. I called the Henderson office directly. Their assistant answered, a young woman with a bright voice. I asked about the file. She told me they had received a revised proposal from a different coordinator. I asked who. She said a woman named Rachel had sent it over Friday afternoon, offering a more comprehensive solution that addressed their needs better than the original draft had. Rachel, I said. Rachel from head office, I don't know, the assistant said. She introduced herself as a senior consultant. She said she was working with our account to improve the service offerings. We were impressed by the speed of her response. Did she send you the file I submitted? I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that. We only received her proposal. The original one never came through. I thanked her and hung up. I sat in my cubicle for a long moment, staring at my phone. Rachel. The same Rachel who had sat at my dining table. The same Rachel who had toasted to new beginnings. The same Rachel who had been quiet when Derek insulted me in the hallway. The same Rachel who worked at head office and had access to files and accounts and whatever else she wanted. I went back to Greg's office and told him what I had learned. I told him about the assistant's call. I told him about Rachel. His face went through a series of expressions that I could not quite read. Surprise, then concern, then something that looked almost like discomfort. Rachel from head office, he repeated. You know her? Not really, I said. She came to a family dinner this weekend. My brother-in-law knows her from college. She mentioned she works at Caldwell. Greg nodded slowly. He was looking at his desk, not at me. I've heard about her. She's been doing efficiency reviews across the branches. She's ambitious, from what I gather. She sent a revised proposal to Henderson, I said. Without telling me. Without coordinating with me. That's not protocol either. I'll look into it, Greg said. But Claire, you need to be careful. Making accusations against a head office consultant. I'm not making accusations, I said. I'm telling you what happened. He held up his hands. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying we need to handle this delicately. She's got connections. So do I said. I've been here 8 years. I've never had a complaint. I've never lost a file. Doesn't that count for something? Greg stood up and walked to his window. He was silent for a long time. I could see his reflection in the glass, his face troubled. Then he said, let me talk to HR. We'll do a system audit. We'll find out what happened to the file. But in the meantime, I want you to take a step back. A step back, I'm putting you on an informal review. Just a precaution. While we investigate. The words hit me like cold water. An informal review. That's a black mark. That goes in my file. It doesn't have to be permanent, Greg said. We'll clear it up. I promise. But I need to show the higher-ups that I'm taking this seriously. Henderson was a big account. I opened my mouth to argue, but I closed it. I had worked for Greg for 8 years. I trusted him. He had never steered me wrong before. If he said it was a precaution, then it was a precaution. Fine, I said. But I want to be involved in the investigation. Of course, he said. You're the one who knows the file best. I left his office and walked back to my cubicle. Nina was standing at the entrance, her face pale. Are you okay? She asked. I heard about Henderson. I'm fine, I said. It's just a system glitch. She did not look convinced, but she did not push. She just said, if you need anything, let me know. I nodded and sat down. I tried to work on other projects, but my concentration was shot. I kept opening the Henderson folder, hoping the file would magically reappear. It never did. I kept checking my sent folder, hoping the confirmation email would suddenly materialize. It never did. At lunchtime, I went to the break room and found Rachel there, pouring herself a cup of hot water from the dispenser. She was wearing a smart navy blazer and a pearl necklace. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. Claire, she said, surprised. What a coincidence. I was just thinking about you. Were you the job opportunity one mentioned at dinner? Have you given it any more thought? I stared at her. You sent a revised proposal to Henderson without telling me. She blinked. I'm sorry, Henderson. The account I was handling. You sent them a proposal on Friday afternoon after I submitted my file. Their assistant told me. Rachel set down her cup. I was asked to review a few accounts as part of the efficiency audit. Henderson was one of them. I submitted my findings to the client, yes. That's part of my job. Your findings, I repeated. My file was deleted. The repository was empty. And then you showed up with a revised proposal. Rachel's expression remained calm, professional, unruffled. I don't know what you're implying, but I had nothing to do with any deleted file. I work from the head office systems. I don't have access to your local repository. Then how did you know about Henderson? Greg asked me to look at it, she said. He wanted a fresh perspective on a few underperforming accounts. Henderson was flagged as high potential. Greg asked her. Greg. My mentor. My second father. He had given her the account. He had kept it from me. I felt the floor tilt under my feet. I steadied myself against the counter. Claire, Rachel said, her voice softer now. I understand you're upset. But this is standard procedure. It's nothing personal. It feels personal, I said. She tilted her head, her smile faint. I'm sorry you feel that way. I really do think you're talented. That's why I mentioned the job opportunity. Evelyn said you were looking for something different. I thought I was helping. I did not answer her. I walked out of the break room and back to my cubicle. I sat down and pulled up my emails again. I searched for anything from Greg mentioning the Henderson review. There was nothing. I searched for anything from Rachel about the account. There was nothing. I searched for the file again. There was nothing. I was being erased. Slowly, methodically, professionally. And the worst part was, I did not know why. That afternoon, HR sent me a meeting request for the next morning. The subject line was informal review, pending investigation. I accepted it because I had no choice. I spent the rest of the day going through old files, making backups of everything, creating a paper trail for every project I had ever touched. It was paranoid, I knew that. But something was wrong, and I needed to protect myself. At 5:30, I was the last one in the office. I was packing my bag when I noticed a light coming from Greg's office. The door was slightly ajar. I walked toward it, intending to say goodnight, but I stopped when I heard voices. She's going to make a complaint, Greg was saying. She can't prove anything, Rachel replied. The file is gone. The audit trail is clean. It's her word against mine. She's been here 8 years. And I've been here 6 months. What's your point, Rachel? She's loyal. She's good at her job. I don't want to destroy her. You're not destroying her. You're managing a transition. The company needs fresh energy. She's stuck in her ways. You said so yourself. Greg sighed. I heard his chair creak. I didn't say that. I said she was set in her routines. Same thing. Look, Greg, you owe me. You know you do. You get me this position, I keep your secret. Fair trade. There was a long silence. Then Greg said, fine. But I'm not going to fire her. Just a transfer. A lateral move to a smaller branch. Whatever you think is best, Rachel said. Just make sure she doesn't make waves. I stood in the hallway frozen. My ears were ringing. My hands were shaking. I backed away from the door, slowly, carefully, and walked out of the office without saying goodnight. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time, gripping the steering wheel with both hands. I did not cry. I was too angry for tears. I just sat there, replaying everything. The dinner. The toast. The deleted file. The meeting request. And now this conversation that I was not supposed to hear. Greg owed Rachel a secret. That was the key. He was protecting her because she knew something about him. Something he did not want anyone else to know. And I was the collateral damage. 8 years of loyalty, 8 years of late nights and early mornings, 8 years of believing I mattered. None of it counted. None of it had ever counted. I started the engine and drove home. Mark was already there, cooking pasta in the kitchen. He asked me how my day was. I told him it was fine. He asked me if I was sure. I said I was sure. He did not push. He never pushed. He just handed me a plate and asked about the Henderson file. I told him it was a system glitch. I told him it was being investigated. He told me not to worry. He told me everything would work out. I ate my pasta and nodded and smiled and acted like nothing was wrong. But inside, I was counting the days until someone in my own family stopped lying to me. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about Greg's secret. I thought about Rachel's smile. I thought about the empty repository, the missing file, the client who had slipped through my fingers. I was not going to take a transfer. I was not going to make waves. I was going to find out what Greg was hiding. And when I did, I was going to use it. The same way Rachel used it. The same way everyone in that office used leverage and secrets and silence. I had been kind for 8 years. I had been loyal. I had been easy. That was over now. I was going to fight. The pasta Mark made that night was bland. He had forgotten to add salt to the water, and the sauce came straight from a jar, thin and watery. I ate it without comment. I had bigger things on my mind than underseasoned food. He asked me about work again, but I gave him the same answers I had given him in the car. System glitch. Investigation. Nothing to worry about. He accepted it with that easy trust that had always been both his best and his worst quality. He trusted people too quickly. He assumed everyone operated with the same straightforward honesty that he did. It was one of the reasons I loved him, and one of the reasons I sometimes wanted to shake him. The rest of the week passed in a blur. I went to work. I went to HR. I sat through the informal review and answered questions about my workflow, my processes, my filing habits. The HR representative was a young woman with a ponytail and a clipboard who nodded at everything I said and wrote nothing down. Rachel was not there, but I knew she was watching from somewhere. I knew she was waiting for me to slip. I did not slip. I kept my voice even. I kept my answers concise. I told them about the confirmation pop-up, the timestamp on my backup drive, the call to the Henderson assistant. I told them about Rachel's proposal, her timing, her access. The HR woman nodded and said they would look into it. She said the investigation would take a few weeks. She said I should continue with my regular duties in the meantime. My regular duties were shrinking. I noticed it gradually at first. Emails that used to come to me were now going to a junior coordinator named Tom. Meeting invitations that used to include me were now being sent without my name. Projects that I had been leading for months were quietly reassigned. Greg said it was to lighten my workload while the investigation was ongoing. I said I understood. I did not understand. I was being sidelined slowly and methodically, and there was nothing I could do about it. By Thursday, I was so exhausted from the effort of pretending that everything was fine that I fell asleep on the couch after dinner. I woke up at 11 to find Mark standing in the doorway, his coat still on, his keys in his hand. Where were you? I asked, my voice thick with sleep. Late meeting, he said. I told you. He had not told me. He had not told me anything. But I was too tired to argue. I nodded and went to bed. He came in a few minutes later, smelling like the outside air, cold and faintly smoky. Friday was worse. I came home to an empty house. Mark had left a note on the counter, saying he was meeting a client for dinner. He did not say where. He did not say when he would be back. I ate a frozen dinner alone and watched television with the sound turned down. I could not focus on any of the shows. My mind kept drifting to Greg's office, to Rachel's voice, to the secret she was holding over him. I did not hear Mark come in. I was in the kitchen, washing the dishes, when I felt a hand on my shoulder and nearly jumped out of my skin. Sorry, he said, stepping back. I didn't mean to startle you. It's fine, I said, drying my hands. How was dinner? Good. Productive. He was wearing his blue shirt, the one he saved for important meetings. It was slightly rumpled, the collar loose. I noticed a small stain on the cuff, something dark, maybe wine. I did not mention it. Who is the client? I asked. Just a procurement manager. From the new account. You wouldn't know him. I turned back to the sink. I did not know why, but something about his voice was off. It was too casual, too rehearsed. He was trying too hard to sound normal. Mark, I said, keeping my back to him. Have you heard from Derek lately? Derek, no. Why, no reason. I was just thinking about the dinner. About Rachel. What about her? I turned around. He was leaning against the counter, his arms crossed. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were wary. He was waiting for something. Evelyn said she was Derek's ex-girlfriend, I said. From college. That's what she said. Do you think they're still involved? He shrugged. I don't know. Derek doesn't tell me much. You know how he is. I did know how he was. Derek was a vault. He kept his secrets close and his emotions closer. But Mark was not a vault. Mark was an open book, or so I had always believed. I had never had to pry information out of him. He offered it freely, easily, without reservation. That was one of the things I loved about him. But lately, I had been wondering if I had been reading the wrong book. Did you know Rachel was going to be at the dinner? I asked. I knew Derek was bringing a guest. He didn't say who. He didn't say she was from Caldwell. He didn't mention it. I studied his face. He was looking at the floor now, at his shoes, at anything but me. The casualness was gone. He was carefully, deliberately, not meeting my eyes. You should have told me, I said. When you found out she was from head office. You should have told me she was working on my accounts. I didn't know she was working on your accounts, he said. I didn't know anything about her work. I only met her that night. Then why does your shirt smell like perfume? He froze. His head snapped up. For a moment, just a moment, his guard dropped. I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Guilt. It was there and gone in an instant, replaced by confusion, a carefully constructed bewilderment. What are you talking about? He said. I don't smell anything. Your shirt, I said. The blue one. It smells like flowers. Like someone's perfume. He looked down at his cuff. He lifted it to his nose and sniffed. I don't smell anything. Maybe it's the soap from the restaurant bathroom. Mark. What? Just tell me the truth. The room was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the microwave ticked. Mark was looking at me now, really looking, and I could see him calculating his options. He could lie. He could deflect. He could get angry. I had seen him do all of those things before, in small ways, over small things. But this was not small. This was something else. Okay, he said slowly. I wasn't with a client tonight. I felt my stomach drop. Where were you? I was with Derek. We met for drinks. Derek. Yes. He wanted to talk about something. Something private. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't my secret to tell. He asked me not to say anything. I stared at him. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the pieces were not fitting together. Derek. Drinks. Perfume. The late nights. The hotel receipt I had not found yet, the one that was still in his coat pocket from last week. The hotel receipt, I said. The one from the downtown restaurant. You said it was a team dinner. It was. There were 5 names. You listed them. Rachel wasn't one of them. Because Rachel wasn't there. Then who was? He was silent. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he had never been able to shake. Look, Claire, I don't know what you're trying to prove here. I've been honest with you. I've always been honest with you. Then tell me who you were with tonight. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the floor again. He looked at the ceiling. He looked anywhere but at me. Rachel, he finally said. I was with Rachel. I felt the air leave my lungs. Rachel. She reached out to me. She said she wanted to apologize for the dinner. For the awkwardness. She felt like she had overstepped. She called you, she texted me. On Tuesday. She said she felt bad about the whole thing. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just to clear the air. And you said yes, I said yes. It was just coffee, Claire. We met at a cafe downtown. We talked for an hour. That's it. Did Derek know? No. Derek didn't know. I didn't tell him. I walked to the table and sat down. My legs felt weak. I could not look at him. I stared at the wood grain of the table, the little scratches and dents that had accumulated over the years. We had bought that table together at a second-hand store a week after we got married. It was not a fancy table. It was not a new table. But it was ours. I had always thought of it as ours. You met her, I said slowly, without telling me. You went to a cafe with a woman you barely know. A woman who works at my company. A woman who deleted my file and stole my client. She didn't steal your client. She was doing her job. Her job. Her job is to replace me. You know that. You heard Derek at the dinner. You heard him say she didn't know anything. That was about me. That was about Rachel taking my place. Mark sat down across from me. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. Claire, you're jumping to conclusions. Derek was being a jerk, as usual. And Rachel is just someone who works at the same company as you. That doesn't make her an enemy. You met her for coffee, I said. Behind my back. And you lied to me about it. I didn't lie. You said you were with a client. I said I was with a client because I didn't want to upset you. I knew you were already stressed. I knew you would read something into it that wasn't there. You should have told me the truth. I'm telling you now. I looked up at him. His face was earnest. His eyes were pleading. He looked like a man who had made a mistake and wanted to fix it. But I had seen that look before, from Greg, from Rachel, from everyone who had told me one thing and done another. I was tired of believing the look. Are you having an affair? I asked. He recoiled as if I had struck him. No. Of course not. How can you ask me that? Because you're lying to me. Because you're meeting women behind my back. Because your shirt smells like her perfume. It was just coffee. I swear. Then let me see your phone. He stared at me. What, let me see your phone? The texts between you and Rachel. If it's just coffee, there's nothing to hide. He did not move. He just sat there, frozen, his face a mask of disbelief. Then he said, "You're serious." I'm serious. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and handed it to me. His hand was steady. His face was still. I took the phone and opened his messages. I scrolled through the list until I found a name I did not recognize. I opened the thread. The first message was from Tuesday. Rachel. Hi, Mark. This is Rachel, from the dinner. I hope it's okay that I got your number from Derek. I wanted to apologize for any awkwardness on Saturday. I felt like I may have overstepped. I'd like to buy you a coffee if you're open to it. No pressure. Mark's reply, sure. How about Thursday, Rachel? Thursday works. There's a cafe on 5th and Maple. 7 p.m. Mark, see you there. The thread went on. They had exchanged a few more texts. Rachel had thanked him for listening. Mark had said it was no problem. Rachel had said she appreciated his perspective. Mark had said she could reach out anytime. It was not explicit. It was not romantic. It was friendly, easy, casual. But it was also private. It was a conversation he had kept from me, a relationship he had built without my knowledge. And the last text, the one from yesterday, was the worst. Rachel, thanks for listening. You're the only one who gets it. Mark had not replied to that one. But he had not deleted it either. He had kept it, like a souvenir, like something worth preserving. I handed the phone back to him. I was shaking. I could not stop shaking. Claire, he said. It's nothing. I swear it's nothing. You told her about our marriage. What you told her about our fights. About my distance. About things you never told me. His face went pale. I didn't know you did. I saw it. I read it. I was venting, he said. That's all. I was frustrated. I was worried about you. You've been so distant lately. You come home tired. You don't talk to me. I didn't know who else to talk to. You talked to her. A woman you just met. A woman who is trying to destroy my career. He shook his head, fast, desperate. That's not what's happening. Rachel is not trying to destroy you. She's just someone who is in the wrong place at the wrong time. I made a mistake. I talked too much. But it was just talk. I stood up. I walked away from the table. I went to the couch and sat down, pulling my knees to my chest. Mark followed me. He stood in front of me, his hands out, his voice pleading. Claire, please. I love you. I love you more than anything. This was a stupid mistake. I shouldn't have met her. I shouldn't have talked to her. But I never, ever would do anything to hurt you. You already did, I said. You hurt me by lying to me. By keeping secrets. By making me feel like I'm losing everything. Nothing is lost, he said. Nothing is lost. We're still us. We're still together. We can fix this. I looked up at him. He was crying now, silent tears running down his cheeks. I had not seen him cry since his father's funeral. He was a man who kept his feelings locked away, who believed in stoicism and strength. Seeing him like this, vulnerable and broken, was almost worse than the betrayal. I'm not going to lose you, I said. But I need to know the truth. All of it. No more secrets. There are no more secrets, he said. I promise. That night, I slept on the couch. Mark did not argue. He came to the doorway at 2 a.m. and asked if I wanted to talk. I said no. He stood there for a long time, silhouetted against the dim light from the hallway, and then he went back to bed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things I did not know. I did not know what Greg was hiding. I did not know why Rachel had targeted me. I did not know if Mark was telling me the truth. But I knew one thing for certain. I was not going to let them take anything else from me. Not my job. Not my reputation. Not my marriage. I was going to find out what was really going on, and I was going to fight for the life I had built. I fell asleep just before dawn, exhausted and hollow. When I woke up, the house was quiet. Mark had already left for work. He had left a cup of coffee on the counter and a note that said, "I'll make this right. I promise." I drank the coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. I had a feeling the cold was just beginning. The weekend was a strange, quiet limbo. Mark and I moved around each other like two ships in a fog, careful not to collide, not quite sure where we were headed. He tried to talk to me several times, but I kept the conversation short and practical. What did we need from the grocery store? Did I want him to pick up my dry cleaning? Should we call his mother for her birthday follow-up? I answered in monosyllables and avoided his eyes. He accepted it with a sad, guilty patience that only made me angrier. I did not want his patience. I wanted his honesty. And I was not sure I would ever get it back. By Monday morning, I had made a decision. I was not going to be passive anymore. I was not going to wait for the investigation to run its course, or for Greg to tell me the truth, or for Mark to explain himself. I was going to find my own answers. I was going to start with the one person in that office who might actually help me. Nina arrived at her cubicle at 8:15, exactly as she always did. She hung her bag on the back of her chair, placed her tea mug on the corner of her desk, and turned on her computer with the same quiet efficiency she brought to everything. I waited until she had settled in, then I walked over and leaned against the partition that separated our workspaces. "Morning," I said. She looked up, startled. "Claire, you're here early." "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Listen, I need to ask you something. It's important." She set down her tea. Her face was cautious, but not unfriendly. She had always been a careful person, one who measured her words before she spoke. I had never minded that about her. It made her a good confidant. She kept secrets well. "What is it?" she asked. "Do you remember the night the Henderson file went missing the Friday before last?" She nodded slowly. "I remember. You were upset about it on Monday. I submitted that file at 11:15 in the morning. I got a confirmation pop-up. But when I checked the repository later, it was gone. Someone deleted it. That's terrible, she said. But what does that have to do with me? I lowered my voice. Do you remember seeing anyone near my desk that Friday later in the day, after hours? She frowned, thinking. Her eyes drifted to the ceiling, searching her memory. Then something flickered across her face. Recognition. Maybe hesitation. I did see someone, she said. On Friday evening. I stayed late to finish a report. Around 7, I went to the printer near the break room. There was someone at your computer. I felt my heart start to pound. Who was it? Rachel, she said. The new consultant from head office. She was sitting at your desk, scrolling through your screen. I thought it was strange because you had already left. But she had a badge, so I assumed she had authorization. You didn't say anything. I didn't think anything of it, she said. She's from head office. She has clearance. I figured she was doing a system check or something. It wasn't my place to question it. I leaned closer. Nina, I need you to tell HR what you saw. I need a witness. Her face went pale. She looked down at her tea, then back at me. Claire, I can't. Why not? Because it's Rachel. She's head office. She has connections. If I speak up, I could lose my job. You won't lose your job. You'll be protected. It's a workplace investigation. She shook her head, fast and small. You don't understand. My son has medical bills. My husband works nights. We're barely making it as it is. If I get on the wrong side of someone like Rachel, they'll find a reason to let me go. They always do. Greg is my mentor, I said. He's been my mentor for 8 years. He'll back me up. She gave me a look that was equal parts pity and fear. Greg is the one who brought Rachel in. He's the one who gave her access to the accounts. He's not going to back you up against her. You know that. I did know that. I had known it since I overheard that conversation in his office. But hearing it from Nina, spoken out loud, made it real in a way I had not been ready for. Greg was not my ally. He was my obstacle. I'm not asking you to do anything risky, I said. Just tell the truth. Just tell them what you saw. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'll think about it. That's all I can promise. Thank you, I said. That's more than I had before. She nodded and went back to her tea. I walked back to my cubicle and sat down. I had a witness. A reluctant, frightened witness, but a witness nonetheless. It was not enough to prove anything on its own, but it was a start. It was a thread I could pull on. I spent the rest of the morning going through my files, my emails, my system logs. I found nothing incriminating. The audit trail was clean, just as Rachel had said. But I kept searching anyway. I had to believe there was something I had missed. At lunchtime, I went to Greg's office. I did not knock. I just opened the door and walked in. He was eating a sandwich at his desk, a turkey club from the deli downstairs. He looked up, annoyed, then surprised when he saw my face. Claire, he said. I didn't expect you. I need to talk to you, I said. About Rachel. He set down his sandwich. His face was unreadable. What about her? I have a witness, I said. Someone who saw her at my desk on the Friday the Henderson file went missing. She was on my computer at 7 p.m. Greg was quiet. He picked up his sandwich, then put it down again. A witness. Who? I can't tell you that right now. But they'll come forward if they have to. Claire, I don't think you understand what you're doing. Rachel is head office. If you start throwing around accusations without solid proof, you're going to hurt yourself more than you hurt her. Then help me, I said. Help me find the proof. He leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, older than I remembered. The lines around his eyes were deeper. The skin under his chin was looser. He was not the same man who had taken me under his wing 8 years ago. He was someone else now, someone I did not recognize. Let me tell you something, he said. When I started at Caldwell, I was like you. Ambitious. Hardworking. I believed that if I did my job well, I would be rewarded. I believed that loyalty meant something. It does mean something. No, it doesn't, he said. It means you're easy to exploit. It means you can be counted on to stay in your lane and not make waves. I spent 20 years being loyal to this company, and what did it get me? A middle management position and a salary that's barely enough to cover my mortgage. So you're helping Rachel because you want a promotion. I'm helping Rachel because she knows things about me, he said. Things I don't want anyone else to know. I stared at him. He had admitted it. He had actually admitted it. What kind of things? That's none of your business. It is my business if it's affecting my career. He stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. The sun was high and harsh, bleaching the color out of everything. I made a mistake a few years ago. A financial mistake. I took some money from a client account to cover a personal debt. I paid it back, but the records were never quite clean. Rachel found the discrepancy when she did her audit. Rachel blackmailed you. She didn't blackmail me. She offered me a choice. Help her with a few projects, and she'd keep the discrepancy off the report. Or don't help her, and I'd lose everything. You let her delete my file. I didn't let her do anything. She did what she wanted. I just didn't stop her. I felt a cold wave of anger wash over me. You let her destroy my reputation to protect your own. You sacrificed me. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. He turned around. His face was pale, his eyes desperate. I have a wife. I have 2 kids in college. I have a mortgage and a car payment and a mother in a nursing home. I can't afford to lose my job. I can't afford to start over. You're young. You'll land on your feet. You don't get to decide that for me. No, he said. I don't. But I'm telling you now, if you push this, you will lose. Rachel is smarter than you. She's more connected. And I can't protect you. I can't even protect myself. I walked out of his office without saying another word. I went back to my cubicle and sat down, my hands shaking, my mind racing. Greg was a coward. He was a liar. He had sold me out to save his own skin. And yet, a part of me understood. Not forgave. Understood. Fear made people do terrible things. I had seen it in Mark's face when I confronted him about Rachel. I had seen it in Nina's face when I asked her to speak up. I had seen it in my own reflection in the bathroom mirror, pale and hollow and afraid. But fear was not a choice. It was a feeling. And I was done letting my feelings control me. That afternoon, I went to see the HR director. Her name was Patricia, a stern woman in her late 50s with a severe haircut and a voice that could cut glass. She had been at Caldwell for over 30 years. She had seen it all. I closed her door and told her everything. I told her about the deleted file. I told her about Rachel's access to my computer. I told her about Nina's testimony. I told her about Greg's financial discrepancy and his relationship with Rachel. I told her about the conversation I had overheard in his office. I left nothing out. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair and folded her hands on the desk. That's quite an accusation, she said. It's not an accusation, I said. It's the truth. The truth is not always easy to prove. Do you have any documentation, emails, recordings? No, I said. But I have a witness. Who is this witness? I can't tell you that. She's afraid of retaliation. Patricia nodded slowly. I understand. But you have to understand something, Claire. Rachel is a consultant. She works for the head office. Her word carries weight. So does mine, I said. I've been here 8 years. I've never had a complaint. I've never been written up. I've never even been late. Patricia studied me for a long moment. Then she said, I'll look into it. That's all I can promise. It was the same thing Nina had said. It was the same thing Greg had said. I was tired of promises. I wanted action. But I nodded and thanked her and walked out of her office with the same hollow feeling I had carried all week. I went back to my cubicle and packed my bag. It was 4:30. I was leaving early for the first time in years. I did not care anymore. I was exhausted. I was defeated. I had done everything I could, and it had not been enough. As I walked to the elevator, I heard a voice behind me. Claire. I turned around. It was Nina. She was standing in the hallway, clutching her tea mug like a shield. Her face was pale, but her eyes were determined. I'll do it, she said. I'll tell them what I saw. I've been thinking about it all day. You're right. It's the right thing to do. I walked back to her and took her hand. Thank you, I said. I know it's not easy. It's not, she said. But I'd rather lose my job for doing the right thing than keep it for being silent. I hugged her. She was stiff at first, then she relaxed and hugged me back. It was the first kind touch I had felt in a long time. I drove home in the fading afternoon light. The sky was orange and pink, streaked with clouds. It was beautiful in a melancholy way. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for a few minutes, gathering myself. I was tired. I was heartbroken. But I was not defeated. Not yet. I walked into the house and found Mark in the kitchen. He was cooking again, something that smelled like garlic and tomatoes. He looked up when I came in, his face full of hope and apology. "I made your favorite," he said. "Chicken with the white wine sauce." "Thank you," I said. I sat down at the table. He brought me a plate and a glass of water. He sat across from me and watched me eat. I took a few bites. It was good. "He was a good cook when he tried." "Claire," he said. "I want to talk. Really talk. No more secrets." I set down my fork. "Okay, talk." "Rachel reached out to me again," he said. "Yesterday. She said she wanted to explain things. I told her no. I told her I couldn't talk to her anymore. I told her I was blocking her number." "Did you?" "Yes. I did it in front of Derek, actually. He was there. He was mad. He said I was overreacting. But I told him I didn't care. My marriage is more important than his friendship." I looked at him. He was telling the truth. I could see it in his face, in the way he held my gaze. He was finally telling me the truth. "She was using you," I said. "She was trying to get to me through you." "I know that now," he said. "I should have seen it sooner. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were warm and steady. He squeezed mine back. "I forgive you," I said. "But it's going to take time." "I know," he said. "I'll wait. I'll wait as long as it takes." We ate dinner in silence after that. But it was a different kind of silence. Not the cold, angry silence of the past few days. It was something else. Something like hope. The knock on the door came at 10 in the morning on a Saturday. I was still in my robe, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold while I stared at the kitchen window, watching nothing in particular. Mark was at the hardware store, buying new hinges for the cabinet that had been sticking for months. I had told him to go. I needed the house to myself, the quiet, the space to think. The knock shattered that quiet like a stone through glass. I opened the door and found Evelyn standing on the porch. She was dressed in a pale blue pantsuit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her handbag slung over one shoulder like she was heading to a luncheon rather than dropping in unannounced. She had a small gift bag in her other hand, the kind you might give for a hostess gift, tied with a gold ribbon. "Claire," she said, her voice bright and firm. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Evelyn," I said, my voice flat with surprise. "I didn't know you were coming." "Obviously," she said, stepping past me into the foyer. "That's why it's called a surprise. I was in the neighborhood. I thought I'd stop by and check on you." I closed the door slowly, watching her as she surveyed my living room with the same clinical eye she always had. She noted the throw pillows, the stack of mail on the side table, the single orchid on the windowsill that I had been trying to keep alive for 3 months. Her gaze lingered on the orchid, and I braced myself for a comment about the watering schedule. "Mark isn't here," I said. "I know," she said. "I called him first. He said he was running errands and that you were home. I wanted to see you. Just you." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. Evelyn and I had always had a cordial relationship, but it was not the kind that involved surprise visits. She came to dinners. She called on holidays. She sent cards for anniversaries. She did not show up on Saturday mornings with gift bags and a pointed smile. This was something else. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, retreating to the kitchen out of habit. It was easier to talk when my hands were busy. "That would be lovely," she said, following me. She settled into one of the kitchen chairs, the one that faced the window, and set her bag on the table. She watched me fill the kettle, choose the teacups, select the chamomile. She was patient, watchful, waiting. I set the cups on the table and sat across from her. The kettle began to whistle. Neither of us moved to pour. "You know about Rachel," Evelyn said. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. "I know about Rachel. Mark told me. He called me last night. He was very upset. He said you'd been fighting." She paused, folding her hands on the table. He also told me Rachel is making trouble for you at work. I looked at her, searching for the motive behind her words. Evelyn was not a gossip. She was a strategist. She chose her words with the same precision she chose her furniture. Everything she said had a purpose. She deleted a file I submitted, I said. She stole a client from me. She's working with my supervisor to push me out. Evelyn nodded, absorbing the information without any visible reaction. That's serious. Have you gone to HR? Yes. I have a witness. But I don't know if it'll be enough. She's always been ambitious, Evelyn said. Even in college. Derek used to tell me about her. She was the one who organized the study groups, who made the connections, who made sure she knew the right people. She was never content to just be part of something. She always wanted to run it. You knew her then. I met her once or twice. When Derek brought her home for a weekend. She was very polished, even at that age. Very charming. Evelyn's mouth tightened. But there was something about her that I didn't trust. She looked at Derek like he was a stepping stone. I told him that. He didn't listen, of course. He never listened. Did she and Derek break up badly? They broke up because she got a better offer, Evelyn said. An internship in Chicago. She told Derek it was too good to pass up. He was devastated. I've never seen him like that before or since. But she didn't look back. She moved on, moved up, made a career for herself. And now she's back, and Derek is acting like the last 10 years never happened. I poured the tea. The steam curled between us, warm and fragrant. Evelyn took her cup and wrapped her hands around it, her manicured nails tapping against the porcelain. I came here to tell you something, she said. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I waited. I know what it's like to be pushed out, she said. Not from a job. From a family. From a place you thought was yours. I did not understand. What do you mean? Evelyn sighed. It was a deep, weary sound, a sound that came from somewhere older than her 60th birthday. When I married Harold, his mother hated me. She thought I wasn't good enough. She thought I was after his money. She made my life miserable for years. She criticized everything I did. My cooking. My housekeeping. The way I raised the boys. She tried to turn Harold against me. And for a while, she almost succeeded. I stared at her. I had never heard her talk about her mother-in-law before. It was a story she had kept locked away, hidden behind the polite smile and the firm voice. How did you survive it? I asked. I stayed, she said. I didn't run. I didn't fight back in the way she wanted me to. I just stayed. I kept showing up. I kept doing my job. I kept being a good wife and a good mother. And eventually, she got tired. She moved on to someone else, someone who was easier to target. And I was still there, still standing, still part of the family. You think I should stay? I think you should decide what you want, she said. Not what Mark wants. Not what Derek wants. Not what I want. What you want. If you want to leave, leave. But if you want to stay, if you want to fight for your marriage and your career and your place in this family, then stay. But don't stay because you're afraid to go. Stay because you choose to. I looked down at my tea. The chamomile had gone cold. I had not taken a single sip. Mark isn't cheating on you, Evelyn said. I know that's what you're worried about. But I've known my son for 32 years. He's a fool sometimes, and he's careless with his words, and he has a tendency to trust people he shouldn't. But he is not unfaithful. He loves you. He has always loved you. The way he looks at you, the way he talks about you, I've never seen him look at anyone else that way. Then why did he meet her for coffee? Because he's an idiot, Evelyn said flatly. He thought he was being polite. He thought he was helping. He didn't see her for what she was until you pointed it out. That's the kind of man he is. He sees the best in people, even when there's no best to see. I laughed. It was a small, bitter laugh, but it was a laugh. That's a generous way of describing it. It's the truth, she said. I raised him to be kind. I didn't raise him to be wise. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a moment. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, a lawnmower started up in the neighbor's yard. Evelyn finished her tea and set the cup down. I'm not here to defend him, she said. He made a mistake. But he's trying to fix it. He called me last night, asking for advice. He wanted to know how to make things right with you. He asked me what I would do if I were you. What did you tell him? I told him to be patient. I told him to listen. I told him that trust isn't built in a day, and it doesn't come back just because you say you're sorry. She stood up. I also told him to be grateful that you're still here. Because a lot of women would have walked out the door the moment they saw that phone. She picked up her handbag and straightened her jacket. I walked her to the door, still processing everything she had said. She turned to me on the porch, her face softer now, less guarded. I know I haven't always been easy on you, she said. I know I've been critical. That's not because I don't like you. It's because I see myself in you. You're strong, Claire. Stronger than you know. And sometimes, I think I was hard on you because I wanted to make sure you were strong enough to stay. Stay, I repeated. You keep saying that. Because that's what I did, she said. And it was the hardest thing I ever did. Harder than leaving ever would have been. But it was worth it. Harold and I have 40 years together. 40 years of good days and bad days and everything in between. And I know at the end of the day he chose me. Not his mother. Not anyone else. Me. She walked down the porch steps and got into her car. I watched her drive away, the blue sedan disappearing around the corner. Then I went back inside and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the 2 teacups, cold and forgotten. Evelyn was right. Mark was not unfaithful. I knew that now. He had been careless and foolish and weak, but he had not been unfaithful. The coffee with Rachel was a mistake, not an affair. The texts were emotional, not intimate. He had shared too much with the wrong person, but he had not crossed the line I had been so afraid he had crossed. But there was another line I had not crossed either. I had been so focused on Mark's betrayal that I had forgotten my own. I had been distant. I had been angry. I had closed myself off from him long before Rachel showed up. I had been so consumed by my own frustrations, my own fears, that I had stopped seeing him. Stopped talking to him. Stopped choosing him. I had thought I was the victim. I had thought I was the one who had been wronged. But I had been wrong too. I had been wrong to shut him out. I had been wrong to assume the worst. I had been wrong to let my pride get in the way of my marriage. I picked up my phone and called Mark. He answered on the second ring. Claire, he sounded worried. Is everything okay? Everything is fine, I said. I just wanted to tell you something. What, come home, I said. I want to talk. Really talk. Like you said. I'm on my way, he said. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up and went to the kitchen. I poured out the cold tea and made a fresh pot. I set out 2 clean cups. I opened the window to let in the spring air. And I waited. When Mark walked through the door, I was standing in the living room. He had a bag of hinges in one hand and a worried look on his face. I walked over to him and took the bag from his hand. I set it on the side table. Then I pulled him into a hug. He stiffened, surprised, then melted into me. His arms wrapped around my back, his face buried in my hair. We stood like that for a long time, not speaking, just holding each other. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry I shut you out. I'm the one who should be sorry, he said. I should have told you the truth. I should have never met her. We both made mistakes, I said. But we're still here. We're still us. He pulled back and looked at me. His eyes were wet. I love you, he said. I love you more than anything. I love you too, I said. Now let's fix that cabinet. He laughed, a startled, relieved sound. You want to fix the cabinet? I want to fix something, I said. I need to feel like I'm building again, not just tearing down. We spent the afternoon working on the kitchen cabinet. He held the door steady while I tightened the screws. We measured and leveled and adjusted. We talked about small things, easy things, things that had nothing to do with Rachel or Greg or the investigation. We talked about the garden and the neighbors and the new restaurant that had opened downtown. It was not a solution to everything. It was a start. That night, we ate dinner together at the table. He had picked up takeout from a Chinese place, the one with the good dumplings. We shared a plate of them, dipping them in soy sauce, laughing about the time I had tried to make them from scratch and ended up with dough stuck to the ceiling. I went to bed early, exhausted but peaceful. Mark came in later and slipped under the covers. He reached for my hand in the dark. I squeezed it back. I'm going to fight for us, he said. I promise. I know, I said. I will too. It was a small promise, a quiet one. But it was a promise made in the dark between two people who had almost lost each other. And I believed it. For the first time in weeks, I believed it. I went back to work on Monday with a different feeling in my chest. It was not confidence exactly. It was more like resignation mixed with determination. I had done everything I could. I had spoken to HR. I had found a witness. I had confronted Greg. I had even made peace with Mark. Whatever happened next, I would face it. I was done hiding. The office felt the same as it always did. The fluorescent lights still hummed. The coffee still tasted like burnt plastic. The cubicles still smelled of stale air and old paper. But I walked through the door with my head up, my shoulders back. I was not going to let them see me broken. I checked my email. There were the usual Monday morning messages, meeting reminders, vendor updates, a note from accounting about a missing timesheet. I answered them all, methodically, without rushing. I was halfway through the third one when my phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Can you come to the break room? I need to tell you something." I got up and walked over. Nina was standing by the window, her back to me, her tea mug in her hands. She looked tense, her shoulders bunched up near her ears. When she turned around, her face was pale. "Patricia from HR called me this morning," she said. "She asked me to come in for an interview. About what I saw." "Good," I said. "That's good. Claire, I'm scared. I've been thinking about it all weekend. What if they don't believe me? What if they fire me?" "They won't fire you. You're doing the right thing." She shook her head, fast and frantic. "You don't know that. You don't know what they're capable of. Rachel has connections. She could make my life miserable. She could make sure I never work in this industry again." "She won't," I said. "I won't let her." Nina stared at me, her eyes wide and uncertain. She wanted to believe me. I could see it in her face. But she had been burned before, by bosses and colleagues, and the kind of quiet cruelty that happens in offices where everyone is too afraid to speak up. She had learned to keep her head down, to stay silent, to survive. "Just tell the truth," I said. "That's all you have to do. The truth will do the rest." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll tell them everything." I squeezed her arm and went back to my cubicle. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine tasks. I answered emails. I returned phone calls. I updated a spreadsheet that no one would ever look at. I was going through the motions, my mind elsewhere, waiting for something to happen. At noon, I got a meeting request from Patricia. The subject line was investigation update. The location was the conference room on the third floor. The time was 2 o'clock. I spent the next 2 hours pacing my cubicle, rehearsing what I would say. I had already told Patricia everything. There was nothing left to add. But I was still nervous, still uncertain, still wondering if any of it would matter. At 2 o'clock, I walked into the conference room. Patricia was already there, seated at the head of the long table. Beside her was a man I had never seen before, a thin man in a gray suit with a clipped beard and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses. He was holding a tablet and a pen. Across from them sat Greg, his face ashen, his hands folded on the table in front of him. Rachel was not there. "Thank you for coming, Claire," Patricia said. "Please have a seat." I sat down at the opposite end of the table. I kept my eyes on Patricia, avoiding Greg's gaze. I could feel him looking at me, could feel the weight of his guilt and his fear. I did not give him the satisfaction of meeting his eyes. "First, I want to thank you for coming forward with your concerns," Patricia said. "We take allegations of misconduct very seriously. We've conducted a preliminary investigation, and we've interviewed several witnesses." The man in the gray suit spoke. "I'm Tom Ashford from the head office compliance team. I was brought in to conduct an independent review of the allegations. Over the weekend, we interviewed Greg Masterson and Rachel Wells, as well as several other employees." Greg's face tightened at the mention of Rachel's name. He looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. "Based on our interviews and the evidence gathered," Tom continued, "we found sufficient cause to believe that Ms. Wells accessed your computer without authorization and deleted the Henderson file. We also found evidence that she submitted a revised proposal under her own name, without your knowledge or consent." I felt a surge of relief, so sharp and sudden it made my head spin. "She admitted it, not initially," Tom said. But she admitted it after we presented her with the audit logs and the testimony of 2 witnesses. 2 witnesses, your colleague Nina Simmons came forward this morning. She confirmed that she saw Ms. Wells at your computer on the Friday evening in question. Additionally, a junior IT technician named David Park discovered a login anomaly during a routine system check. Ms. Wells's access badge was logged at your workstation at 7:03 p.m. She used her own credentials. I leaned back in my chair. I felt like I was floating. What happens now? Ms. Wells's contract has been terminated, effective immediately. She has been escorted from the premises. Additionally, we will be notifying the clients affected by her unauthorized actions and taking steps to restore your professional standing within the company. What about Greg? The room went quiet. Greg looked at me, his eyes pleading. He was a broken man, sitting there in his rumpled suit, his reputation crumbling around him. He had been my mentor. He had taught me everything I knew. And he had sold me out to save himself. Greg has admitted to his involvement, Patricia said slowly. He has acknowledged that he was aware of Ms. Wells's actions and did not report them. He has also admitted to a separate financial irregularity that was discovered during the investigation. His employment is being terminated as well. Greg closed his eyes. He did not speak. He did not defend himself. He just sat there, silent and still, like a man who had already accepted his fate. I wanted to feel sorry for him. I wanted to feel some of the old warmth, the gratitude I had carried for 8 years. But all I felt was a cold, hard emptiness. He had chosen himself. He had chosen his fear over his integrity. And that was not something I could forgive. Claire, Patricia said, her voice softer now. I know this has been difficult. We want you to know that the company is committed to making things right. You're being offered a full reinstatement of your position, with back pay for the time you were suspended. Additionally, we'd like to offer you a promotion to Greg's former role as Regional Operations Manager. I stared at her. A promotion. It was everything I had worked for, everything I had wanted. And yet, as I sat there in that sterile conference room, I felt nothing but exhaustion. I need to think about it, I said. Can I have some time? Of course, Patricia said. Take all the time you need. I stood up and walked out of the conference room. I did not look back at Greg. I did not say anything to Tom or Patricia. I just walked down the hall, past the cubicles and the break room and the water cooler, past the people who were pretending not to stare, past the walls that held 8 years of my life. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the ground floor. The doors opened. I stepped inside and stood there alone, watching the numbers descend. When I got to the parking lot, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. I had won. I had actually won. Rachel was gone. Greg was gone. My name was cleared. My career was intact, better than intact. I had everything I had fought for. And I felt nothing. I drove home on autopilot, through the familiar streets and the familiar traffic, past the grocery store and the dry cleaner and the park where Mark and I used to walk on Sunday mornings. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for a long time, just breathing. Mark was in the backyard when I got home, pulling weeds from the flower bed. He looked up when he heard the back door open and wiped his hands on his jeans. How did it go? He asked. Rachel is gone, I said. Greg is gone. They offered me a promotion. He stood up, a slow smile spreading across his face. Claire, that's amazing. That's everything you wanted. I know. He must have heard something in my voice, because his smile faded. What's wrong? I walked over to him and sat down on the edge of the flower bed. He sat beside me, his knee touching mine. The dirt was cool and damp under my hands. I don't want it, I said. Don't want what of the promotion? I don't want to be Regional Operations Manager. I don't want to stay at Caldwell. He stared at me. You're turning down a promotion after everything you went through. I've been at that company for 8 years, I said. 8 years of late nights and early mornings and weekends spent catching up on work. 8 years of believing I was building something, of believing that it mattered. And in the end, it didn't. Greg sold me out. Rachel lied about me. The company only took action because I forced them to. They would have let me take the fall if I hadn't fought back. But you did fight back. And you won. Did I? I looked at him. I want a job I don't want anymore. I want a title that feels hollow. I want a place in a company that showed me exactly how little it values loyalty. Mark was quiet for a long time. He pulled a dandelion from the dirt and tossed it aside. What do you want to do instead? I don't know, I said. But I know I don't want to go back to that office. I don't want to be the person who has to look at Greg's empty chair and remember what he did. I don't want to be the person who has to wonder if the next Rachel is already on her way. He reached over and took my hand. Then don't go back. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. You're not disappointed I'm giving up a lot of money. A lot of stability. I'm disappointed in myself for ever thinking a job was more important than you, he said. I'm disappointed that I let myself get distracted. But I'm not disappointed in you. You're the strongest person I know. If you say it's time to leave, I believe you. I leaned my head on his shoulder. The garden smelled like damp earth and fresh grass. The roses we had planted last spring were starting to bud, tiny green promises on the thorny stems. I saw my mother-in-law today, I said, using the nickname that made him smile. Evelyn. She told me to stand still. She said that was how she survived. Did you listen to her at first? But I think standing still was only part of it. The other part was walking forward. Not running, not hiding. Just walking. He kissed the top of my head. Where are you walking to? I don't know yet. But I'm not staying in that building. I'm not staying in that office. I'm not staying in a job that makes me feel small. That night, I called Patricia and told her I was declining the promotion. She was surprised, but she did not argue. She told me the offer would stand if I changed my mind. I thanked her and hung up. I spent the next week on leave, taking the time Patricia had offered while I considered the promotion. I went to the garden with Mark. I planted tomatoes and basil and a new row of marigolds. I called Evelyn and told her I was leaving Caldwell. She said, "Good. You were never meant to stay there." I did not know if she meant it as a compliment, but I took it as one anyway. On Friday, I got an email from the head office. It was addressed to all employees, a formal announcement about Rachel's termination and Greg's resignation. There was no mention of me. I did not expect one. I was the kind of person who made things happen behind the scenes, who fought battles that no one ever saw. I was okay with that. I had not won the war by becoming the general. I had won it by staying myself. And that was enough. On Saturday morning, I woke up early and made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had sat with Evelyn, the same table where Mark had cried and apologized. I watched the sun come up through the window, painting the kitchen in shades of gold and pink. I had lost a lot of things in the past few weeks. My trust, my peace of mind, my belief that hard work and loyalty were enough. But I had also gained something. I had gained clarity. I had gained a deeper understanding of what mattered. Mark came downstairs, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in every direction. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat across from me. Have you figured out what you want to do? He asked. I think so, I said. There's a smaller logistics firm across town. They're looking for a senior coordinator. It's less money, fewer hours. But I heard the culture is better. The people are decent. I might apply. That sounds perfect, he said. It sounds ordinary, I said. And I think that's exactly what I need. I looked out the window at the garden, at the roses starting to bloom, at the tiny green tomatoes on the vine. The world was still spinning. The sun was still rising. Life was still happening, ordinary and imperfect and messy. I was ready for it. I was ready to walk forward, one step at a time, into whatever came next. The morning of my first day at the new job, I woke up before the alarm. The sun was just starting to creep through the curtains, pale and watery, the kind of light that promised a cool spring day. I lay in bed for a few minutes, listening to Mark's steady breathing beside me. He was still asleep, his face relaxed, his hand resting on the pillow where my head had been. I had not slept this well in months. I got up quietly and padded to the kitchen. I made coffee and poured it into a travel mug, the one with the scratched lid that I had been using for years. I packed a lunch, a simple sandwich and an apple, and slipped it into my bag. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. I was wearing a plain blouse and dark slacks, nothing fancy, nothing flashy. I looked like myself. That was the point. Mark came downstairs just as I was putting on my shoes. He was still in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes, his hair a mess. He looked at me and smiled, a sleepy, crooked smile that made my heart ache. "You look nervous," he said. "I'm not nervous," I said. "I'm just ready." He walked over and kissed my forehead. "You're going to be great. You know that, right?" "I know," I said. "I'll call you at lunch." "Please do. I want to hear everything." I walked out the front door and got into my car. The engine turned over with a familiar rumble. I pulled out of the driveway and drove through the quiet morning streets, past the houses and the trees and the children waiting for school buses. The sky was clearing, the clouds thinning, the sun growing warmer. The new office was in a smaller building on the south side of town, a 2-story brick structure with a crooked sign that read Riverside Logistics. It was not impressive. It was not glamorous. It was real. I parked in the lot and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the building. It was old, the paint chipped, the windows slightly fogged. It looked like a place where people worked hard and went home on time. It looked like a place where I could start over. I walked inside and introduced myself to the receptionist, a woman named Carol who had silver hair and a kind smile. She told me to wait in the lobby, that the operations manager would be with me shortly. I sat down on a worn couch and looked at the framed photos on the wall. There were pictures of the staff at holiday parties, potluck lunches, charity runs. Everyone was smiling. Everyone looked like they actually liked each other. The operations manager was a man named Frank, a stocky man in his 60s with a beard and a warm handshake. He led me to my new cubicle, which was smaller than my old one but had a window that faced the parking lot. I could see a patch of grass and a single oak tree. It was not much. It was enough. "I know we're not as big as Caldwell," Frank said. "But we take care of our people here. If you need something, you ask. If you're overwhelmed, you speak up. We don't do the whole corporate warfare thing. We just do our jobs and go home to our families." "That sounds perfect," I said. He nodded and left me to set up my desk. I unpacked my bag, my pens, my notebook, the small framed photo of Mark and me from our wedding day. I placed it on the corner of the desk, just where it had always been. It felt right to have it there, a small piece of home in this new place. The morning was quiet. I went through training materials, met a few colleagues, learned the basics of the new system. It was not complicated. It was straightforward, practical, the kind of work that required attention but not anxiety. I felt myself relaxing for the first time in weeks. At lunch, I called Mark from the break room. He answered on the first ring. "How's it going?" he asked. "Good," I said. "Really good. The people are nice. The work is manageable. There's no drama." "That sounds like heaven." "It kind of is," I said. "I think I made the right choice." "I know you did," he said. "I'm proud of you, Claire. I've always been proud of you." I smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached my eyes. "I'll see you tonight. I'll be there. I'm making dinner. The good chicken." "Mark, you don't have to." "I want to," he said. "Let me take care of you for once." I hung up and finished my sandwich. I looked out the window at the oak tree, its leaves rustling in the breeze. It was a small view, a modest view. But it was mine. That evening, I drove home through the golden light of early evening. The streets were familiar now, the turns and stops routine. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, watching the house. It was the same house I had always come home to, but it felt different. It felt like a place I had chosen, not a place I had settled for. Mark was in the kitchen when I walked in. He had the chicken in the oven, the vegetables on the stove, the table set with the good plates. He was humming a tune I did not recognize, something light and cheerful. He turned when he heard the door and gave me a wide smile. "A welcome home," he said. "Thank you," I said. "It smells amazing." "Just wait. I've been practicing." We ate dinner at the table, the same table where we had fought and cried and made up. The chicken was excellent, tender and juicy, the sauce rich and savory. I told him about my day, about Frank and Carol and the crooked sign. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. It felt easy. It felt natural. After dinner, we cleared the dishes together. I washed, he dried. We worked in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that does not need to be filled. When we were done, we went to the living room and sat on the couch. He put his arm around me, and I leaned into him. I got a text from Derek today, he said. Oh, I said, my voice carefully neutral. He wants to apologize. For the dinner. For bringing Rachel. He said he didn't know she was going to cause so much trouble. He said he feels terrible about everything. Does he? I think so. He sounded sincere. He asked if you were okay. He asked if there was anything he could do. I thought about Derek, about his careless words and his easy charm. He had been a part of the problem, even if he had not meant to be. But he was also family. He was Mark's brother. He was part of the package. Tell him he can apologize in person, I said. Next time he's in town, he can come over for dinner. But no surprises. No unannounced guests. Mark smiled. I'll tell him. He'll be happy. I'm not doing it for him, I said. I'm doing it for you. And for me. I'm done carrying grudges. They're too heavy. He kissed the top of my head. You're amazing, you know that, I'm learning, I said. Later that night, I sat in the backyard with a cup of tea. The stars were out, scattered across the dark sky like tiny pinpricks of light. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of the roses that had finally bloomed. I looked at them, the pale pink petals unfurling in the moonlight. They had been planted in the spring, before everything fell apart. They had survived the cold and the drought and my neglect. They had bloomed anyway. I thought about the past few months. I thought about Rachel and Greg and the deleted file. I thought about the investigation, the confrontation, the hollow victory. I thought about Evelyn's visit, her story about standing still. I thought about Mark's apology, his tears, his slow and steady efforts to rebuild what we had broken. I had lost a lot. My mentor. My trust in the company. My belief that hard work and loyalty were rewarded. But I had also gained something. I had gained clarity. I had gained a deeper understanding of what mattered. I had gained a marriage that was stronger for having been tested. I had gained a sense of myself that did not depend on a title or a paycheck or someone else's approval. I heard the back door open. Mark stepped out, wrapped in an old sweatshirt, his bare feet on the damp grass. He walked over and sat beside me on the bench. Couldn't sleep, he asked. Just thinking, I said. About everything. Good thoughts or bad? Good, I said. For the first time in a long time, good. He reached over and took my hand. We sat there in the dark, watching the stars, listening to the quiet hum of the night. The garden was peaceful. The roses were blooming. The world was still turning. Mark, I said. I'm glad I stayed. He squeezed my hand. I'm glad you did too. We stayed out there for a while longer, wrapped in our own thoughts, wrapped in each other. Then we went inside and went to bed. I fell asleep almost immediately, a deep and dreamless sleep, the kind I had not had in months. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the curtains. Mark was already downstairs. I could hear him moving around in the kitchen, the clatter of pots and pans, the sound of the coffee maker. I got up and dressed, the same plain blouse and dark slacks. I went downstairs and found him at the stove, making eggs and toast. Good morning, he said. Good morning, I said. We ate breakfast together. We talked about the day ahead, about the garden, about the neighbor's new puppy. It was ordinary. It was mundane. It was everything I had ever wanted. I drove to work with the windows down, the cool air rushing in. The sun was bright, the sky clear, the world fresh and new. I parked in the lot and walked into the building. Carol greeted me with a smile. Frank waved from his office. My colleagues nodded and said hello. I sat down at my desk, my small desk with the window and the oak tree, and I started my work. It was not glamorous. It was not exciting. But it was real. It was honest. It was mine. I had not won the war by becoming the general. I had not won it by destroying my enemies or claiming a title or proving everyone wrong. I had won it by staying myself, by choosing what mattered, by walking forward one step at a time. And that was enough. That was more than enough. I stood in the garden for a long time after Mark went inside. The air was cool and quiet, the kind of quiet that settles over a neighborhood when everyone has gone to bed. The roses were fully open now, their petals soft and pale in the moonlight. I reached out and touched one, feeling its delicate weight against my fingers. It had taken months for them to bloom. They had survived the cold and the neglect and the long weeks when I had forgotten to water them. They had bloomed anyway. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The dinner party where everything started to unravel. The missing file and the betrayal at work. The confrontation with Greg, the whispered conversation in his office, the weight of his secret and his fear. Rachel's smile, her careful lies, her slow and methodical attempt to erase me. Mark's mistake, his guilt, his painful honesty. Evelyn's visit, her unexpected gift of understanding. Nina's courage, her small but vital act of standing up. The meetings and the interviews and the hollow victory that had left me feeling more empty than triumphant. I had lost so much. My trust in the company. My belief that loyalty and hard work would always be enough. My mentor, the man I had looked up to for 8 years. But I had also gained something. I had gained a clearer vision of what mattered. I had gained a marriage that had been tested and had not broken. I had gained the freedom to choose, not out of fear or desperation, but out of clarity and hope. The new job was small and unassuming. The building had a crooked sign and a parking lot with potholes. The work was not glamorous and the pay was not generous. But the people were decent and the culture was honest. There were no hidden agendas and no betrayals waiting in the wings. It was the kind of place where I could do my job and go home at the end of the day, leaving my work at the door and my peace intact. Mark was waiting for me inside. I could see the light in the kitchen window, warm and steady. He had made dinner and set the table and poured the wine. He was not perfect, and neither was I. But we were together, and that was enough. I walked back inside and closed the door behind me. The kitchen smelled like garlic and herbs. Mark was at the stove, stirring something in a pot. He turned when he heard me and smiled. It was the same smile he had given me on our wedding day, the same smile that had made me believe in forever. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything is fine," I said. "Everything is exactly where it should be." We ate dinner and talked about the garden and the neighbors and the small, ordinary details of our lives. We cleared the dishes and washed them together, moving around each other with the easy rhythm of people who had learned to fit. When we were done, we sat on the couch and watched the late news. It was a quiet evening, an unremarkable evening. But it was ours. I went to bed and fell asleep with the window open, the cool air drifting in. I dreamed of roses and sunlight and a road that stretched ahead, not straight and not certain, but open. When I woke up, the sun was rising. Mark was already awake, his arm around my waist, his breath warm on my neck. I closed my eyes and smiled. The journey was not over. It would never be over. But I was ready for whatever came next. One step at a time, one day at a time, one bloom at a time.